The parable of the sower. On that day, Jesus went out of the house and sat down by the sea. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood along the shore. And he spoke to them at length in parables, saying, A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky ground, where it had little soil. It sprang up at once, because the soil was not deep. And when the sun rose, it was scorched, and withered for lack of roots. Some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it. But some seed fell on rich soil, and produced fruit, 100 or 60 or 30-fold. Whoever has ears ought to hear. And so here I am in Sedalia, Colorado. I just did a silent 8-day retreat. And every day I've come out here and I've run. And this is one of the sights I get to see is this old iron plow. And I'm reminded of how, today we really don't have much experience with farming. A lot of us. I come from a farm town, but I didn't farm. I grew up on a rural street. But look at this thing. This old iron plow. This would have allowed so much more to be harvested. And, when we look at these parables, we have to think to ourselves, we're more urban dwellers. What exactly is being said here? Because, we hear something over and over again, at Mass, maybe it's when it's proclaimed during the homily. And maybe we're losing sight of part of the reality of the kind of agrarian culture that was there. And so in this passage, when Jesus is talking about the sower and he's casting seed everywhere, in the Mediterranean, you wouldn't necessarily have a plow like this. But what you do, you have kind of like a sandy soil. And so you have your little satchel and you cast your seed out and you throw it under the ground. And then maybe you have a plow of some kind that you pull behind a horse, or it's by hand, and you then have your seed that's kind of strewn into the ground, which today seems kind of really foreign to us. You're like, well, why are you wasting your seed? It's the same thing. If you're casting, who casts seed onto rocky soil? What kind of sower? This sower will be out of work immediately because he's wasting all of his master's seed, or he's wasting his own. Who spends money on seed to just throw it into the rocks, to throw it into the weeds, throw it into the thorns? You throw it into prepared soil, or soil that's somewhat ready, right? And so, we lose sight of that. So what does that mean? Well, there's two things going on. One is that God sows wherever he wants, and he sows everywhere. So people who think, I can't be loved, or people who think, I'm depressed, or I'm no good, to the people who seem like they have it all together but really don't. God is casting that seed on rocky soil where we don't think that, faith in God could grow. Maybe you have atheist friends, or maybe you have people who in your life who they hate God or they're angry with God. Maybe people are indifferent. Maybe you have people who just don't seem like they care. And maybe there's people who they go, but maybe there's really no depth going on. Maybe there's something that needs to be cultivated there. God's casting it everywhere amongst people who maybe there seems like no chance. Maybe it seems like there's a great chance. And I think of an example. We have this young adult. He just joined the church, and I was able to help sponsor him. And he didn't grow up in a family of faith or anything like that. So you could maybe consider him sort of rocky soil, or I don't know what you would initially consider that. But an invitation to go to Mass, one of our young adults invited him to go to Mass, and that was just the start of something. And now he's Catholic, and he's very joyful in his faith. So, someone who you think, oh, maybe, there's no point even in going there, even talking to them about this. Wrong. God is choosing to cast it everywhere. Why don't we ourselves, in this, what we were calling the new evangelization, why don't we cast that everywhere? Why aren't we spreading the joy in places where maybe it's not going to take root, but we're taking the chance anyway? Because what happens when it does? God says it produces 30, 60, 100-fold. I mean, when you plant something, you plant corn, you get like 3 ears at most, okay? Maybe 4. 30, 60, 100-fold. You can look at the fruit that people are going to bear in their lives when they live the joy of the gospel. They live the Paschal mystery, where they die with Christ and they're risen. How are we going to spread that? How are we going to sow that in places? Are we just going to give up and say, oh, no, you can't, no? Because almost every time in my life when I've invited someone to Mass, they've almost always come. So just think about that as you think about the parable of the sower.